What happens when you lead with the end in mind? Welcome to this week's episode of the Blender Business Show. I'm your host, producer Jemmy. Visualizing your end results and backtracking to create the steps to get there can be a critical exercise that makes or breaks the potential of your business for sure. As Agencia Clicage explains, quote, "In today's rapidly evolving business environment, product visualization has emerged as an indispensable tool for companies in virtually every industry. The ability to visualize a product before it enters production offers a range of strategic advantages that span from design optimization to marketing success. Visualizing a product before production also helps streamline collaboration across departments, from engineering to marketing, ensuring all stakeholders have a clear understanding of the product's attributes and functionality. This alignment can reduce miscommunication and keep production on schedule, saving time and resources," end quote. So all of that rings true for sure when you're creating a product or also when you're creating a service. But how can we apply all of that to your content creation? As written by ASEAN Labs, quote, "Whether you are developing a software, making a physical product, or pursuing any other creative effort, the difference between witnessing the outcome from just imagining it has the power to make or break your journey," end quote. Today, we're going to rewind back to episode 18 of a show I used to co-host. It was the official show for the Podfest Multimedia Expo called the Podfest Podcast. On that episode, I had my dear friend Neil Guiarte on to both be the third guest and be my stand-in co-host, as my regular co-host Glenn Hebert of the Horse Radio Network was traveling. But before we get into that main tip, I want to share one more point of research on this idea of pre-visualizing your end product that is a solid segue from the broader idea of pre-visualizing your business objectives to more specifically doing so for your promotional work. Promotional Products Association International breaks down the advantages of visualizing a product's end result to 6. Number 1, it makes the goal or idea real. Number 2, it fires you up. Number 3, it lights your creative spark. Number 4, it demands clarity. Number 5, it defines a clear path. And number 6, it encourages positivity. Michael Hyatt, the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Michael Hyatt and Company, further notes that it becomes not only easier to start, but easier to keep going. So let's keep going. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of how you can pre-visualize your promotional content before you get underway towards creating it. What you will hear next is Neil's tip, which was rooted in these concepts of visualization, followed by our discussion on it. This episode is brought to you by Flintstone Media. Listen in. Guess who contributed the next tip, Neil?
Some generic dude.
Some generic dude named Neil.
I recorded this a while ago, so it was probably a generic tip, so I recant my challenge.
And you recorded it not for this show. You actually recorded it for episode 6 of one of my shows on the Florida Podcast Network, Techsploration. But it was such a good tip. It's short and sweet, but very powerful. So this tip, it's general. Like anybody can use this, but I guarantee you, very few people have thought of it this way. So Neil's tip is coming up now.
This is Neil Guiarte from Wild Style Media in Tampa, Florida. And my quick tip is this. Pre-visualize your productions, whether they're podcasts, whether they're video for YouTube or a high-end production. Many people just dive right in, or they think they know what they're doing. And the act of simply pre-visualizing everything before it's done will help you to organize better the assets that you need to create the project. And you'll also have a desired and set outcome that you could try to reach. So simply put, think about it in advance, imagine it completed, hit record, and hopefully you'll hit the mark.
Okay, before you say anything new, here's why I really appreciated this tip. Well, for a lot of reasons, it's a really great tip, but I also appreciated it because you've done a lot of wonderful things on the microphone. You've done a lot of wonderful things on camera, but you've done so much work behind the microphone, so much work in that post-production. I mean, your show was called All Things Post, for crying out loud. And so we don't hear enough about the post-production. And sometimes people don't think about it until they're at the time to do the post-production. Mm-hmm. And that is why this tip is so powerful. You flip it around. You tell them, no, you need to start with that in mind. I love this tip.
And it's even good if you hire an editor, because you still need, and previs comes from the world of film. As you guys know, if you love a movie, you can bet there's an animated pre-visualization of what that scene looked like before it was ever shot. And there's a reason why they're shot so well, so specifically to generate an emotion out of you, right? So when I did that tip, I was kind of in that mode of, take something great from the movie world that we all love and apply it to editing. Because even if you hire an editor, you still can tell him what your pre-visualization is. And now, instead of them just editing in the dark, or they're just caught up in in a style that they have, and your show starts to sound like every other show they cut, now they have a look, a feel, a vibe, because you had it before you started versus, oh, I recorded it. And, now that I recorded it, could you make it do this? I get that as an editor all the time. I'm like, no. Good in, good out. I can't make you look skinnier in a photo. Like, it is what it is. So same thing with your audio, right? Like, don't record a podcast and then tell the editor to add, drums and sound effects and people applauding. If you pre-visualize this properly, you can just have a more, not only good show, but well produced. I want to start challenging people to produce better stuff. We all can make content, but what if we start to really tighten our post and really tighten our previs so that our shows start to sound really polished? And now we've created another echelon of podcaster.
I gave some advice, again, on the aforementioned Clubhouse the other day, that even if you outsource your post-production, it's good to still listen to that raw audio because it helps you make your own original audio better. You can get better at doing things. But another reason why I think that's important is because it allows you to better understand what that post-production process is. Now, if you do the editing yourself, think about it this way while you're recording. And I've seen Neil and I have done it without thinking, even as we're recording this show. And it's all in outtakes. You won't hear it. Too bad. So sad. But, but what it is when we mess up, we're able to restart that sentence with the edit already in mind.
Yes.
We know how we're going to put it together in the finished product. So we know what we had, we know where the flub was, and then we know how to create something in that next sentence that's going to allow that patch to happen in the edit. So both on the macro level, like you were talking about it, Neil, and on the micro level of terms of everything that you're doing in the moment, think about what that next step or that final step or how it's going to be worked out in production.
I couldn't agree more. As a DJ, I always tend to hear wiki wiki wah right before I talk. So like every time I come back in, it sounds like, "What's up, everybody, party people?" I'm sorry, wiki, wiki. For the editor, right? Just edit out the wiki wiki part and then pick it up at my Little John section. Sorry, just trying to have fun. Good. Sorry, I get on with Jemmy and I stop being professional. Gee.
It's the Jemmy influence, the Jemmy fluence.
7 a.m. Clubhouse. You've messed my mind.
My bad.
Apologize.
My bad. Nope. Sorry, not sorry. Welcome to my Sticky Note Quickie for this week's Blender Business Show. So Neil and I spoke about pre-visualizing your production on both a macro and micro level. And I wanted to share a few additional ways that you can implement this technique, some more obvious than others. And these can apply to all kinds of elements of promotional work. It can be a podcast, it can be a video blog, it can be creating short clips for social media, reels, TikToks, it can be creating a webinar or some other promotional material for your business. So, in recording all that stuff, think of those things that you can control while recording in order to reduce the amount of fix-it work that needs to be applied in post-production, such as lighting. If you want nice, bright lighting for your end video, make sure you're not only in a well-lit area, but also be sure to be facing the light source. That way, you won't be backlit, which can produce the exact opposite effect and darken you. Next is background noise. As a podcast editor, I can attest that removing background noise is a nightmare. So picking a space to record in that is quiet and contained is super important. And wind is an ultimate culprit of killing a recording in post-production. So avoid windy conditions as much as possible when creating your content. And if wind is unavoidable, try to place your body between the microphone and the direction the wind is coming from. Trust me, as a person who used to co-host a travel adventure show, nothing makes you want to scream and cry at the same time more than when you go to edit a recording and wind is all over it. And if the background noise is intended to act as ambiance, you'll want to be sure to record in such a way that it minimizes, 1, the overall volume of that background noise, and 2, the likelihood of intermittent loud noises, like a crowd walking by or a train horn or things like that. Then there's also background people to consider. This one is fairly simple and straightforward. If there are other people in the space where you're recording, do you want them in your final shot? If not, you may need to reconsider your space or the angle you're recording from. And speaking of angles for video content, the angle of your shot is something else to carefully consider by visualizing the video you want to end up with first. Also, think about whether you need to record from 2 different angles simultaneously in order to have your editor switch back and forth between the 2 or more shots for added visual effect. And you also should consider recording some of your content, whether the full production or just pieces of it, more than once. Having different versions of the recording to choose from can give your editor more artistic control over how you present your content, what inflections to use for certain sentences, which wording works best, that sort of thing. In fact, as a side note behind the scenes, I'm recording some of these lines more than once. Just so I can make sure I have a really, really perfect inflection, at least what I think is perfect inflection, for the final podcast that you are hearing right now. And one more note on varying the angles of your shots. If you want some portions of your end video to be zoomed in, then you may consider recording with 2 different devices. Sure, you can always zoom in post, but that might end up degrading the video quality more than you'd like. Whereas, if you have a second device recording at the same time that's already set to be zoomed in, that quality will be retained. Also, think through what other footage, what we call B-roll, if any, may be needed to flesh out and complete your video. You may want to record some shots from your surroundings, both scenery-wide shots and tight object-focused shots, to splice in during your video and add some context or additional visual appeal. And if in your final production, whether video or audio only, you want to cut to something else, then think about that first and be sure to record lead-ins to other clips and lead-outs from other clips in order to have smooth segues in your final production. And last but not least for you today, if you have a co-host for your show, videos, podcasts, whatever, then discuss ahead of time which of you is going to record different bits of the project. The open, the close, guest intros, ad reads, those sorts of things. Consider which would be the best option ahead of time, given the overall flow of your project. And if you have the time, have you both record some of that stuff and hand it all off to the editor and let them decide and make those editorial judgments that give you a really smoothly flowing overall end product. So now that you know what to pre-visualize, how do you do it? Well, I found an article for you from BetterUp called 5 Visualization Techniques to Help You Reach Your Goals, which discusses both outcome visualization, which they define as, quote, envisioning the desired future endpoint, end quote, and process visualization, which they define as, quote, envisioning every step toward that desired outcome, end quote. So, of course, I have that article also linked in the show notes for you, along with all the other resources referenced for you in this episode. Neil was one of my closest friends, and he sadly passed earlier this year. So after the very end of this episode, I've included a little bit of bonus audio for you. It's the end of that Podfest podcast episode where Neil and I were closing the show, and I just thought it was a really sweet way to memorialize my friend. Rest in peace, Neil. This week's episode was brought to you by Flintstone Media, my podcast production house and consultancy firm. In fact, you can email me and my team at the show at blender@flintstonemedia.com. Thanks for listening. If you are a business owner, marketing manager, or content creator, join in the conversation with other Blender members on our Slack channel, which you can find the link for along with everything else at blenderbizshow.com. So what happens when you blend creative content into your business? I'm producer Jemmy, and I look forward to bringing you those valuable ideas and great stories every week on the Blender Business Show. We are the Blender community, where business and media mix.
Neil, I want to thank you so much for being my co-host today, for stepping in. You're always my immediate go-to when I hear Glenn's going to be unavailable, which only has happened one other time. But shout out to Glenn for all your hard work and for being on the road. And shout out to Neil for stepping in today. I really, truly appreciate you. Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate it. You don't ever ask. You just like get on at one. I mean, I didn't know. I like that you're thanking me, because when you ask me, it's not like that. I don't feel.
I voluntold you.
It's like, yo, dude, I know you're not doing anything right now. Can you get on at 1:30? And also,
you get to pick the time.
And if you like me a little better than Glenn, let the show know. Let the whole producers know. If you want to have a third wheel more frequently, I can do it in Spanish too.
Oh, you can do the coming out next is the Spanish and Espanol, the Telemundo version.
Florida, so we need to have the South Florida, Miami Vice version of this show. Right?
Oh my gosh, we are so getting off the rails.
I'm always happy to be here. I love you. And guys, listen to the tracks, listen to the tips on this episode, taking it back to a tiny bit of professionalism. Both Jemmy and I coach people all the time. And one thing about a coach is that it's easy to get repetitive, and it's easy to keep regurgitating what worked. And as Jemmy and I talked offline, the technology is changing every day. The styles, the way people are producing changes every single day. So make sure you're listening to this podcast, because it's giving you the most up-to-date ways to achieve things. And we are extremely good looking. And you don't see that literally on very, very podcasts.
Just use your theater of the mind. We're sure it's accurate.
We are very cute. Just saying.
Oh my Lord. I thought you said we're going to take it back to professionalism. What was that?
I don't know what happened. We got to change the title of the Jemmy podcast. Then we can have fun all the time.
Don't get me started.